We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. I am the Reverend Glenn Farley. There's a joke that the most important part of a UU service is the coffee hour, and sadly, because of COVID precautions, we've only been doing coffee hour outside, and the weather is going to preclude that today. But we'll still have a new member welcome ceremony, and we have the choir singing this morning, so I'm excited for the service. Even though I'm an ordained religious leader, I did not learn how to control the weather at UU Seminary. It's not a class I took. We want to extend a special welcome to any visitors today, and after the service, you're welcome to socialize at the back of the meeting house. We are observing COVID precautions indoors and wearing masks regardless of vaccination status. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like to share, please fill out a blue card and give it to an usher, and it'll be read later in the service, or you can text the phone number printed in the order of service or speak into the microphone during joys and sorrows. I'd like to invite Nisea up now. Nisea is a 14-year-old who goes to Power Middle School in Farmington, and she's going to be joining with her mother this morning, and I asked her to help me light the chalice. So Nisea, could you come up? She's going to light it, and I will read some words. We call this light before us and hope we may always remain a strong community, working together to make the world a better place. When we are grieving or sad, when we are challenged, when we need help, this flame guides us out of the darkness. When we are cheerful, when we celebrate, when we accomplish a great task, when we return to the place that makes us happy, this chalice reminds us to share our happiness with others. Okay. In the order of our service is our shared affirmation of mission, and I invite you to join with me in reciting it aloud. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. Okay. We have some fun hymns to sing together today. We've taken familiar tunes and changed the lyrics, so our opening song is Give Me That UU Religion, and it's to the tune of Give Me That Old Time Religion. The choir is going to stand up in the front and turn around to try to help us along, but it just kind of name drops a lot of famous Unitarians and Universalists from history, and if you want to learn more about most of these people, you can just go back to the back hallway and look on the walls. And so with that, we'll sing our opening song, Give Me That UU Religion.
It was good enough for Lydia Brown, and it stood enough
As part of our service this morning, we are pleased to welcome those who have chosen to become members of our congregation. The decision to become a member is an expression of spiritual commitment. Though our spiritual journeys and questioning continue, you have nevertheless come to a time in your journey where you are willing to say, yes, this is my spiritual home. Today we celebrate that homecoming. At this time, I would like to invite our Executive Board President, Liz Knight, to come forward and share a few words and help me welcome our new members. Liz?
As President of the Executive Board, it's my pleasure to welcome our new members today into our congregation. Our individual journeys have brought us together in this moment and in this place to share a common purpose and a vision for our collective future. We celebrate the decision to become members of this congregation and to link your new future with ours. Through the choice to join this congregation, you have expressed your intention to commit to our vision, to promote our principles, and to be a part of this community. Through you, our new members, the congregation is renewed. We welcome and honor the diversity you bring, which increases the vitality and creativity of our community. We embrace you this day, honoring the talents and energy you add to our congregation. We encourage you to savor the journey you have begun today to find a place in our congregation that is distinctively yours. May your spirit be nurtured here as, together, we do our part to create a loving, just, and sustainable world. We welcome you.
Okay, so let's get this going. Anybody, new members, come on down. You can be people who talked to me already, or it can be an altar call. You can just, if the Spirit moves you, you can come on down. And come stand behind the chalice, and Liz is going to help you sign the book and hand you a flower and some other pieces of paper and all kinds of fun stuff. And I'm going to say what's happening. Okay. You will now sign the membership book formalizing your commitment. You will receive a gift to welcome you to the congregation, and you will receive a flower. The flower symbolizes the beauty contained in each human spirit. May you flourish and blossom as a flower within this vibrant community.
Hello, my name is Erin Comartin, and excited to become new members. This is my wife. I'll let her introduce
Yep, I'm Heidi Comartin, the other half. We also have a son, Everett Comartin. He's downstairs.
Hi, I'm Crystal, and this is my daughter, Nasea, and we decided to join to have a sense of community.
I'm so glad I have Liz up here to help me. I love this ceremony, but there's always so much to do, and I always forget something. So I'm glad I just had Liz to organize it. Wonderful.
Hi, my name's Yvonne Wyborny. My husband Dave and I signed the book back in 1985. But then, during the time that Reverend Suzanne Paul was here, they had a trouble with quorum, so they sent us a letter. We weren't coming to the church, and if you don't say otherwise, we're gonna remove you from the church. We got married here in 1985, and that's when we signed the book. So, I love this community so much, and I love this church. So I figured it was time to sign the book again and become.
Woohoo! Yes, big round of applause and thank you and welcome to Heidi and Aaron, Crystal and Nisea, did I say it right? And of course Yvonne. So thank you very much.
Wait, stay up there, stay up there, stay up there.
Oh.
We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Okay.
Glad I got Reverend Glenn to keep me on
Yes,
top of things.
that's right. With joy, okay, so I'm going to read something, and this is from the congregation's point of view. So at the end, if you agree with what I say, congregation, please say, we do. I would put this in the order of service, but we ran out of space. With joy, we affirm and recognize your decision to become members of this beloved community. We pledge to support you in your search for truth, to celebrate with you in times of joy, to help you in times of trouble, and to join with you in rightful action. Congregation, if you affirm these sentiments, please say, we do. We do. Whew, good. You never know with UUs, you know. So independent-minded. Okay, I'm going to speak to the new members, and if you agree with it at the end, please say we do. By joining the UU Church of Farmington, we commit to supporting one another in our efforts to speak honestly, to act with compassion, to love without prejudice, to live with integrity, and to respond with courage to the demands of justice. We pledge to support our congregation and the association of which it is a part as we are able, with our hearts and hands, our talents and resources. New members, if you affirm these sentiments, please say, we do. We do. Wonderful. In our work together across the generations, may we become a more effective instrument of service, a voice for liberation, reason, and respect, and a community in which we can honor all that life brings to us. Recognizing we all have ministries to fulfill, we celebrate together in the unity of spirit and the universality of love. May it ever be so. Amen. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. At the end of the film, The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy says to Glinda, the good witch of the north, she has a deep hope to go back home. And she says, "Oh, will you help me? Can you help me?" And Glinda responds, "You don't need to be helped any longer. You have always had the power to go back to Kansas." "I have?" The Scarecrow interjects, "Why didn't you tell her before?" And Glinda says, "Because she wouldn't have believed me. She had to learn it for herself." And the Tin Man says, "What have you learned, Dorothy?" "If I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. Because if it isn't there, I never really lost it to begin with." And with that, Glinda tells her to close her eyes and tap her heels together 3 times. And think to yourself, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. When I was 2 years old, my father got a new job at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C. Accordingly, my family moved down to that area, Silver Spring, from Philadelphia, the city in which my parents were born and raised. The Washington, D.C. suburbs, for me, was my only childhood home. I would never know or remember living in Philadelphia because I was too young. And immediately when we moved down, my family began attending the Cedar Lane Unitarian Church in Bethesda, Maryland. It was quite a large church or close to 1,000 members at the time. It was nestled back in a wooded area surrounded by trees, pretty similar to this church, and it had a robust religious education program for youth, with a minister of religious education leading it, which is a rarity in Unitarian Universalism today. And it always had many volunteer teachers. For me, it was a wonderful religious community to grow up in. I always felt supported and valued there by everyone. The fellow youth, the adults, the elders, the ministers, and the staff. A lot of the religious education was based on a youth empowerment model. Basically, this was an attempt to facilitate in such a way to create a situation where the youth would take the lead, make decisions for themselves, and practice autonomy. My earliest memory of this is from a middle school religious education Sunday school class. The class would be downstairs in the church building in a room with really, really cushy chairs. And we would sit in a circle with 2 adult facilitators among the youth. And the adults simply refused to lead the discussion. So there would be silence, and it would get awkward. Awkward silence. They created a leadership vacuum and then would wait for the youth to enter into that leadership. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it really didn't. But there was learning in that too. Given the location of the congregation and the typical demographics of Unitarian Universalists at the time, there was many members of Cedar Lane whose career was in government or government services. Many worked at the National Institutes of Health, like my father. The main building of NIH was less than a mile from the church building. There was an urban legend about the location of NIH. I don't know if it's true or not. It's on Wisconsin Avenue, and Wisconsin Avenue originates down in downtown Washington, D.C., and travels north and northwest through Washington and continues into Maryland, through Chevy Chase and Bethesda, and up to Rockville and all the way to Frederick, Maryland. The legend was that FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, would get driven out to the green pastures of Maryland to visit his mistress. And he saw these open rolling fields on either side of Wisconsin Avenue right after Bethesda, and that's where he decided to put the National Institutes of Health, because he thought, why not here in this cow pasture? So the west side of Wisconsin Avenue is NIH, and the east side is the National Naval Medical Center. And just a little east of that is the Cedar Lane Church, which wasn't built until the 1950s. Other members of the congregation worked in education as teachers, like my mother, and professors. There was lawyers who specialized in government contracts, and some who worked in government for the state of Maryland or the county executive of Montgomery County, Maryland. And some worked in nonprofit think tanks. Even though I lived in D.C., I never had any experience of the stereotypes of D.C. politics or gridlock. I wasn't immune, or I wasn't completely shielded from it. It just didn't exist in the forms we've been led to believe from the rest of the country. I lived at home during my undergraduate years at the University of Maryland, and this was a time my mother was ill with brain cancer, and I wanted to be nearby to care for her. I was still active and involved at Cedar Lane through this time, and the church was a source of strong support as my mom was ill and dying. At this time and into my young adulthood, I would usually work with the youth group, first as a volunteer and later on as a paid youth coordinator. I entered the workforce after college in the investment industry, and I worked in mutual funds and then wealth management for the next 7 years. Then I changed direction and entered seminary with the intention of becoming a UU minister, and that was in 2007, 15 years ago. Since that time, I've learned repeatedly, over and over, how fascinating that change of career is to many people, from the investments to ordained ministry. To me, it seemed natural, and it wasn't that exciting. But After the first dozen or so people were really excited to hear my yawn-inducing journey from my point of view, I thought to myself, wow, how can I make this story more exciting while still telling the truth? From the stock exchange to the steeple, or serving mammon to serving God. Ministers often talk of a call to ministry. A classic story comes from the Bible of St. Paul on the road to Damascus, or Isaiah, who says, "Here I am, Lord, send me." The clouds part and a voice of God calls you to lead the people. It didn't happen that way for me. It was a slower, more gradual process. I view it as less of a call and more of a recognition of who I already was or who I could be. My call to ministry was really about my UU identity that was formed growing up at Cedar Lane. I call it challenge and support. I always felt challenged and supported there, both at the same time. Challenged to be my best self and supported for who I was at that moment. For example, probably around 1990, Cedar Lane became a welcoming congregation. It went through that process. The broader cultural views of gays and lesbians in 1990 is quite different from what it was or what it is in 2022. And my call to ministry is difficult for me to put in words, but it has something to do with that challenge. I knew that the ministerial formation process would require me to expand every resource, every aspect of myself, my personality, my human beingness, required me to grow spiritually, intellectually, and emotionally. I knew it would be difficult. I knew I had to fulfill that potential that the church members saw in me. Something close to that is what was the still small voice crying in the wilderness as my call to ministry. And so here we are today, kicking off our pledge drive for the upcoming church year. You may be thinking, why is he talking about his childhood? This is supposed to be the Sermon on the Mount. For two main reasons I'm talking about it. One is that even though I've been here for 5 or 6 months, the board heard from a member last month that they felt like they didn't really know me. So I wanted to share more about who I am, and I just shared who I really am. And the second reason to share all that was to illustrate the importance of religious community as a spiritual home. And that is what we will discuss today, how important the UU Church of Farmington is. Some ideas of spiritual community. Starhawk, the theorist of ecofeminism, writes what a spiritual community is to her. She says that somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up when we enter, and voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, some place where we can be free. The Quaker educator and author Parker Palmer tells us of how we need each other on our spiritual journeys. He writes, "The journey towards inner truth is too taxing to be made solo. Lacking support, the solitary traveler soon becomes weary or fearful and is likely to quit the road. The path is too deeply hidden to be traveled without company. Finding our way involves clues that are subtle and sometimes misleading, requiring the kind of discernment that can happen only in dialogue. The destination is too daunting to be achieved alone. We need community to find the courage to venture into the alien lands to which the inner teacher may call us." Specifically, Unitarian Universalist communities, I outlined in my life story the reasons why I think they're important. But the Reverend John Wolf, who's the Minister Emeritus of the UU Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, says it more succinctly. He says, you want to support a Unitarian Universalist church because it has a free pulpit. You can hear ideas expressed there which would cost any other minister their job. You want to support it because it's a place where children can come without being saddled with guilt or terrified of some celestial peeping Tom, where they can learn that religion is for joy, for comfort, for gratitude and love. You want to support a UU church because it's more concerned with human beings than with dogmas, because it searches for the holy rather than dwelling upon the depraved, because it calls no one a sinner, yet knows how deep is the struggle in each person's breast and how great is the hunger for what is good. You want to support a UU church because it can laugh. It stands for something in a day where religion is still more concerned with platitudes than with prejudice and war. You want to support it because it buys you some insurance policy towards your funeral service. Not because of that. I forgot the most important word in that sentence. You want to support it not because it buys you some insurance policy towards your funeral service, but because it insults neither your intelligence nor your conscience, because it calls you to worship what is truly worthy of your sacrifice. There's only one reason for joining a UU church: to support it. We've come to the bottom line. How much should you give? I often say you should give until it feels great. Sometimes new people who have no church experience want to know because they have no experience of church giving. The Bible talks about tithing, giving 10%, and that is often the goal. But according to most studies, the average Protestant and Catholic pledge in this country is roughly 2%, give or take. Mormons come closest to tithing, which about a third or a half of them do. In UU congregations, we usually suggest 2 to 5% of your income as generous pledges for most members. UU statistically have the highest per capita income of any denomination and the lowest per capita giving. I think there's 3 theological reasons for that I won't go into, but that's the reality, and it's been that way for decades. Giving generously can be very uncomfortable initially. Our income is limited, and this will limit it more. However, the benefits are greater than the costs. You are putting your money where your mouth is. You are taking the first step of living your values. You are committing to an ideal much, much larger than yourself. It must be said, this is not an exclusive club for which you must be able to afford the dues. Please think in terms of percentage, not amount. Income is not evenly distributed, so you give what you can. You give generously from the reality of your current income. Even if your income is very limited this year, it is important to pledge something. If you are thirsty, we have the water of companionship and community to offer you, the water of love and spiritual search to satisfy your thirst. There is no charge, but nor is it free. There is a commitment required, and that commitment is called love. It's called the willingness to risk religious relationship, to become a part of beloved community. Will you accept? Let's see. I invite you to share in a moment of stillness and silence together. Kehil Gibran from the Prophet writes, "You often say, 'I would give, but only to the deserving.' The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish." May it be so. I'd like the choir to come up and share with us one light. The theme for this year's pledge drive is "There's no place like home," to remind us how special this spiritual home is. But I came across I'm on some UU minister listservs, and a couple years ago, on one of those listservs, a minister posted, comment on a pledge drive theme, snarky, unserious answers only. So I'm going to share some of them. Some of them are really snarky, and I'm not going to share them. I'm going to only share the mildly snarky ones, but I thought they were funny. One of them said, "Pledge, God loves you, but for the rest of us, the jury is still out." Another one was, "Dentistry, because it's like pulling teeth." One said, "Stewardship 2023. Let's try not to shoot ourselves in the foot, okay?" Your language about gun violence is offensive to me, so I'm cutting my pledge. Our faith is free, but heeding the sanctuary is not. Compound your interest for our principles. Another theme was, don't worry, we'll just hire a minister who's got a wealthy spouse with health insurance. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Do you want this to be a parable or an Edgar Allan Poe story? Your choice. You don't have to tithe 10%. 11 or 12 are equally acceptable options. And the best one is, it's just like NPR. The pledge drive won't go away until we make budget. With that, with our morning's offering, will now be gratefully received. At this time, I invite anyone who is visiting, if you're comfortable doing so, to please stand and tell us where you're from and how you heard about us. We'd love to meet you. Any visitors or guests this morning? Okay. I'm pausing a long time because we had like 6 last week, so I want to give people time. Wonderful. Now is our time for joys and sorrows, and a perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. A perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as gifts of compassion and strength. So if you'd like to come up and speak into the microphone and share a joy or sorrow.
It's true we don't have zillions of dollars, right? But on the other hand, we are rich. I feel we are rich because we have so many people that place such a high value on stewardship. And people who volunteer with our kids, thank you. People who volunteer on committees, people who come out and clean the grounds here. There's so much energy and we can do so much together. It's really amazing to me. And hey, by the way, we have full-time ministry. Can we give ourselves a hand for doing that? Oh my gosh. Absolutely amazing. So thank you for whatever you're able to do. If you have any questions during the pledge drive, please contact me or anybody on the fundraising committee. Thank you.
other joys or sorrows to share? Okay. You got one, Kelly? Closing song, it's to the tune of Summertime, and it's called Budget Time. It's printed in your order of service. And the Dhammapada is sayings attributed to the historical Buddha, and he's quoted as saying, "With gentleness overcome anger, with generosity overcome meanness, with truth overcome delusion." So I say to you, don't be mean. May you go in peace.